Good morning, dear students. I am Bharti Kathuria Sehgal from the SD Vidya School, Ambala Kent. Today, I am going to start with the next chapter, How do organisms reproduce? In the previous chapter, Life Processes, we discussed about processes like nutrition, respiration, transportation, and excretion. In this chapter, we will be dealing about reproduction. Reproduction is the process of production of new organisms by the pre-existing organisms. So, the pre-existing organisms by various processes give rise to new organisms of the same kind. Now, reproduction is not a life process because life processes are required by each and every individual of a species of the living world. But reproduction is a process which is required for the continuity of the species, but it is not mandatory for an individual to be able to reproduce. There are sterile organisms like mules that we call as khachar. Then there are infertile couples who are not able to give rise to young ones, but still they are living. But reproduction still is a very important process. The importance of reproduction is it helps in continuity of life, as we discussed, because life continues when pre-existing organisms give rise to new organisms of their type. The next importance of reproduction is they help in producing variations. So organisms, by the changes in their DNA, are able to adapt themselves to the changed environment. For this, there is an example given in the NCERT regarding bacteria. They have given an example that a group of bacteria were living in a pond. But then there was a change in temperature due to global warming. Few bacteria who had variations in their DNA because of which they were able to cope up with the changed environment with the warm water, they were able to survive, but the ones which could not change were not able to survive. These changes are called as variations. Next is evolution. Evolution is the accumulation of variations over long period of time which gives rise to new body designs. So variations when accumulate means जमा होती रहती है, बहुत लंबे टाइम तक जब बहुत सारी variations जमा होती रहती हैं, they help in evolution. These are the processes which occur due to reproduction. Now we move over to various modes of asexual reproduction. Asexual and sexual are the two modes of reproduction. In asexual mode of reproduction, there is only one parent which is involved. While in sexual mode of reproduction, there are two parents involved. Most of the simple life forms, which are either unicellular or have very simple structure, can reproduce through asexual reproduction, but the multicellular and the higher organisms reproduce by sexual mode of reproduction. First of all, we are going to start with the process of binary fission in amoeba. Binary fission, as the name indicates, binary stands for two and fission means breakdown. So it is the process of formation of two new cells by one cell of amoeba. So one cell of amoeba breaks down into two new daughter cells. Now these are called as daughter, not son, because for the sake of ease, so that you can understand that these are kind of cells which will further give rise to new individuals. So the cell of amoeba in conditions which are favorable will always keep on dividing. So we say that if the conditions are favorable, amoeba is immortal, and all those organisms which reproduce by such methods are immortal and will keep on dividing if they have favorable conditions. In this, there are two basic steps which are involved. The first step is the division of the nucleus, which is called as karyokinesis, in which karyo, the word karyo stands for nucleus. So the division of nucleus occurs first, And then there is division of the cell or the cytoplasm, which is called as cytokinesis. So these are the two steps, that is karyokinesis and cytokinesis, which leads to the binary fission in the organisms. There is another example of binary fission given in your textbook, which is binary fission in leishmania. Now, amoeba and leishmania both undergo binary fission, but there is a difference in the binary fission of the two. In case of amoeba, amoeba can divide from any plane along its sides. But in case of leishmania, leishmania can divide only from a single plane. As you can see, leishmania is dividing from only this plane. So it can divide into two halves only by a single plane. But in case of amoeba, it can divide from anywhere along its axis. So leishmania is also showing the process of binary fission, that is one cell breaking down into two new daughter cells. Next, we move on to the process of fragmentation. Spirogyra shows this process. Spirogyra, which is a thallophyte, belongs to kingdom Plantae. It divides into smaller pieces and each piece can give rise to a new filament. So this process in which one filament can give rise to many new filaments is called as fragmentation. Next, we move on to regeneration. The example of regeneration in the NCERT given is planaria. Planaria, when it breaks down into pieces, each piece can give rise to new planaria. But you have to remember that in fragmentation, the spirogyra, when it gets mature, it divides itself वॉलेंटरली, अपनी मर्जी से खुद उसको पीसेस में डिवाइड करेगा और खुद उसमें से नए फिलामेंट्स बनाएगा. लेकिन ये जो मोड हम पढ़ रहे हैं रीजनरेशन का, इसमें जो ऑर्गेनिज्म है accidentally अगर it breaks into pieces, then it will give rise to new individuals. It is not a normal mode of reproduction. Regeneration occurs in lizard also when they regenerate their tail, but no new organism is being produced. So regeneration of tail in lizard is not a mode of reproduction. Always remember this. Next, we move on to the another mode of asexual reproduction, which is budding. In budding, a bulb-like projection appears. Now here we have given a tiny bump appears on the parent hydra. So we have taken an example of hydra in which a bulb-like projection appears and this bud then starts growing. And when it grows up to a certain level, then it gets detached to become an independent individual. Now this process in which a bud gives rise to a new organism is called as budding. The examples are hydra and yeast. Here you can see in yeast cell also, the bud appears on the parent cell. This bud then again can give rise to new buds, which will again develop into new yeast cells. Now there is another point to remember here, that the bud will not divide into new cells. The older bud that you can see here is the first one on the top that you can see. New buds are arising from the parent yeast cell. So the parent yeast cell is actually giving rise to the entire chain of buds. Next, we move on to the spore formation in Rhizopus. Rhizopus belongs to the kingdom fungi. Rhizopus has production of spores, which are unicellular small structures which are produced in this round structure called as sporangium. There is a term which is given in the NCERT which says blob on stick structures. There was a question related to this in the CBSE exam also, that what kind of reproduction is present in the organisms showing blob on stick structure. So always remember from the NCERT that blob on stick structure refers to Rhizopus, in which these round structures are the blobs and these hyphae are the sticks. These sporangium produce spores which are released when the sporangium breaks down. These spores can then germinate to give rise to new fungi. The next mode of asexual reproduction is vegetative propagation. Now, vegetative propagation is the mode of reproduction in which vegetative parts of the cells, the vegetative parts of the cells means the root, stem, leaves, are participating in the process of reproduction. Reproduction is not taking place through seeds. So, when you grow a rose plant from its stem, or you grow a new money plant from its stem, or as you can see here, the bryophyllum. This is given in your NCERT also. So, this structure that you can see in the leaf of the bryophyllum are called as the notches. So, new plants can arise from the notches of the bryophyllum. Now, this mode of reproduction in which the new plants are arising from the vegetative parts of the plant are called as vegetative propagation. There are few benefits of vegetative propagation. In vegetative propagation, the new plant which will be produced will be exact copy of the parent plant. So suppose if you have a plant, suppose you have a hybrid, or you have a plant which you want exact copies of, you can grow through vegetative propagation. Because if you are growing it through sexual reproduction, new features will be introduced. But in vegetative propagation, the plant produced will be exact copy of the parent. Second is the plants which are seedless and do not produce seeds can be reproduced by the process of vegetative propagation. The third benefit of vegetative propagation is it is less time consuming. So if you are growing the rose from its stem, it will grow in a shorter span of time as compared to if you grow it from the seed. The next mode of reproduction under this is the tissue culture. Tissue culture is given in the box in the NCERT. Here we are talking about micropropagation. Micro, the word micro stands for very small. So we are taking a very small sized tissue from the vegetative part of the plant, which is then grown in the nutrient solution. A nutrient solution is a solution of various nutrients which are required by the cells of the plant. And then the cells start dividing and develop into an embryo. Now, when a seedling emerges, then it can be transferred to the nursery or to the fields and can grow and give rise to a new plant. This mode of vegetative propagation is called as tissue culture or micropropagation. That's all for today. Thank you so much. God bless you.